Another villain joins the good guys. Yuji and Maki return to the fight, and is Sukuna finally starting to break? Also, Gojo is now facing some serious allegations on Twitter, so you know it was a crazy chapter. Let's get into it. You guys know the drill. If you enjoy my JJK videos, you want to see more in the future, leave a quick like and comment right now for that YouTube algorithm. And if you want to get notified for more of my videos in the future, be sure to subscribe and click that bell. Okay, so in the last chapter, Kusakabe went all out and showcased his new Shadow Style Simple Domain technique, which focuses on epic sword drawing Iaido moves. Kusakabe's attacks did manage to surprise and impress Sukuna, and the King of Curses suffered some real damage. I also really liked the moment when Kusakabe's blade broke from all the slashing he was doing, and then he just threw his coat off and started throwing hands with Sukuna. Truly a badass moment from our boy Kusakabe. That said, when Kusakabe tried to go in for the kill by stabbing Sukuna through his already damaged heart using a katana blade made of cursed energy, which was super cool by the way, Sukuna unfortunately anticipated it and stopped the blade with two of his fingers. After that, Kusakabe met the same fate as so many other sorcerers before him. On the next page we see him lying lifeless on the ground with two giant slashes across his chest. Uiui then showed up and tried to do what he's been doing for every fallen sorcerer, teleport them back to Shoko for a possible revival of some sort. Maybe they're still alive and can be healed. Maybe they can be brought back as cursed corpses or vengeful spirits. I don't know what exactly is going on, but something clearly is going on because Uiui wouldn't be risking his life over and over again for nothing. Now Sukuna has been getting annoyed by Uiui's meddling for some time, so when he appears this time around, Sukuna is ready for him. He sneaks up on the boy from behind and is about to kill him until Miguel suddenly shows up and Uiui is rescued at the last possible second. It turns out that Miguel did not come to fight Sukuna alone. LaRue is also there, and he was the one who saved Kusakabe with his curse technique that allows him to manifest a giant human hand and snatch targets up. If you need a reminder, LaRue is that guy from Ghetto's old crew who wears heart stickers on his nipples for some reason, so pretty memorable guy. In a flashback, we see Yuta talking to Miguel and LaRue about the two of them helping in the fight against Sukuna. Initially Miguel, who seems to be dressed like Gojo for some reason, says that he has no interest in fighting a monster that could defeat even Gojo. LaRue tries to convince Miguel to join the fight, telling him that all he'll need to do is deliver the decisive blow after Sukuna has already been worn out from his fight with Gojo and the other sorcerers. Yuta and LaRue tell Miguel that if they don't defeat Sukuna, then they can't stop Kenjaku's plan to initiate a merger between Master Tengen and all of humanity, which could create a global threat on the scale of Godzilla. Although realistically, I would think it's even worse than Godzilla. As far as I know, Godzilla doesn't have unlimited levels of cursed energy. But as was hinted in the previous chapter, Miguel isn't too fond of the Japanese and their tendency to think that the entire world revolves around them. I mean, in the world of JJK, it kind of does because Japan is where the vast majority of the action is and where like 99% of the world's sorcerers are. But Miguel reasonably resents this. He says that Gojo should have come to him personally to ask for help, with his head bowed down in a sign of respect. LaRue keeps trying to convince Miguel, but Miguel feels that his loyalty was to Geto, and he did his duty as a faithful follower of Geto. Then after Geto died, Miguel still agreed to help Gojo train Yuta, and after all that, Miguel, who is originally from Kenya, doesn't want to be involved with Japan and their affairs. You can't really blame him for that either, because from what we've seen thus far, the Japanese Jujutsu sorcerers, and especially the highly traditional great sorcerer families, seem to have very little interest in anything or anyone outside of Japan. LaRue believes that what they need to do is give it their all in this fight in order to make sure that Geto will rest in peace in heaven. But Miguel is like, what? He definitely went to hell, not heaven. Personally, I don't think that the Geto argument holds any water either, but I do think that the point about fighting Sukuna being better than fighting whatever Tengen's merger will become is a fair point. Who knows what could happen when the merger occurs? It really could be a world-ending disaster. In the end, Miguel does agree to join the fight, but he has a set of specific conditions. He will fight Sukuna if and when Gojo and Yuta both try to fight him and both lose, and only if at that point Sukuna is unable to use his domain. He also insists that LaRue must be there to help him in the fight against Sukuna, and that is when the chapter brings us back to the battlefield at the present moment. Miguel has assessed the situation, and he notices that at this point Sukuna can't use his domain, his reverse curse technique has been significantly weakened, and his heart is injured and it still hasn't healed. So on paper, this is as good a time as any to give it a go against Sukuna. Now, as you might expect, Sukuna isn't worried, and he even smirks before rushing up the building to attack the newcomers. LaRue uses his curse technique Hard Catch to grab Sukuna and slam him into the wall of a building. This technique apparently allows LaRue to manifest a giant hand anywhere and grab a target, and the hand will be restored even if it is destroyed. However, 1/10 of the damage that the hand has taken will be transferred to LaRue. Miguel's curse technique is also revealed in this chapter, and it is very interesting because it allows him to enhance his own physical abilities, and then his body is able to kind of feel the rhythm of his opponent's attacks, which allows him to dodge cursed attacks extremely effectively, including Sukuna's slashes. It's almost like having Ultra Instinct and instinctively dancing through enemy attacks without being hit. We then see a flashback of Gojo explaining Miguel's curse technique to Yuta. Gojo says that Miguel's physical abilities are incredibly impressive to the point of being frightening, and although his curse technique is very useful, it's not necessarily a scary one. According to Gojo, 99% of Jujutsu sorcerers are Japanese and they use cursed energy to strengthen their bodies. But Miguel has a stronger skeletal structure and physique than a normal Japanese sorcerer, and so he is naturally physically stronger and doesn't need to rely on cursed energy as much in terms of making him strong. Miguel complains that Gojo seems to be implying that Miguel has a special physique just because he's not Japanese, and in other words, just because he's black. Miguel points out that not every black person is athletic, meaning that Miguel himself is special not because he's black, but because as an individual, he is unique. Gojo responds to this by saying sorry, and Miguel replies that it's fine. Now, as you can probably imagine, this quick exchange between Gojo and Miguel in a flashback sparked an uproar on Twitter, with a bunch of people already claiming that Gojo is a confirmed racist. Now we're working off unofficial translations here, and even the official translations can often be highly contested when it comes to controversial topics. So unless you can read Japanese fluently, it will be hard to decode what exactly the implication is here. To me personally, based on what we've seen so far, Gojo is saying that Miguel is taller and stronger than most Japanese people, and that gives him an advantage because most sorcerers are Japanese and they need to rely on cursed energy for strengthening their bodies a lot more than someone like Miguel. Miguel is quite clearly very physically fit. In the anime he looks absolutely jacked, and it seems that his curse technique actually gives him an additional physical buff. The only point of contention here is that Miguel wants to clarify that this is not because he's not Japanese or because he's black, but because he as an individual is special and unique. That is a totally valid point from Miguel, and to me, it doesn't feel like Gege is trying to say that Gojo is actually racist here, although he did seem to be buying into stereotypes about Japanese people being shorter and weaker and black people being taller and stronger. It's kind of like a positive stereotype, I guess, but it's still a stereotype and it still isn't accurate. So I don't think that Gege is trying to tell us that Gojo is racist, more like he's just been a bit sheltered in Japan, and especially as a member of the big three sorcerer families, he must have been extra isolated from the outside world. And that's exactly the point that Miguel has been making since the last chapter. Since most sorcerer action is in Japan, the Japanese tend to act like the outside world doesn't exist, and a non-Japanese sorcerer like Miguel obviously resents that. Back in the present, we see Miguel grabbing one of Sukuna's arms with one hand while punching him in the gut with the other. In that moment, Choso attacks Sukuna from behind with his supernova, and then Yuji also returns to the fight. He jumps right on top of Sukuna and smashes him in the face with his fists, and that is when all hell breaks loose. Fighters that were taken out of the fight earlier are now returning and teaming up with Miguel and LaRue to really push Sukuna to the edge. The narrator says that in order to activate his world/attack, Sukuna needs to use a hand sign called Enmaten, which is a sign that also needs to be used to activate Malevolent Shrine. Because Sukuna lost an arm back when Gojo used his final Hollow Purple, Sukuna had to use a Binding Vow instead of a hand sign to attack Gojo with that final World Slash, the one that supposedly killed him. Because of that, Sukuna now has to use both the hand sign Enmaten and an incantation at the same time to activate World Slash. That is the price he had to pay as part of that Binding Vow. In addition, Sukuna now also has to set the exact direction of the slash with his hands. But now, Sukuna has a big problem because while he is fighting Yuji, another one of his arms is suddenly cut off by none other than Maki, who now also returns to the fight. Maki is back, Yuji is back, Choso is back, and they're all fighting Sukuna at the same time, along with Miguel and LaRue. Sukuna can't believe that Maki is already able to fight again after taking that black flash attack from him not too long ago, but he doesn't have much time to think about it because he's already on the move. Yuji knows that Sukuna has only 2 right arms because the left ones have been severed. This means that Sukuna can't make hand signs properly, and since he also still hasn't recovered his ability to properly use reverse curse technique, they might actually be able to win now. After all of those battles and all of that damage and so much planning and working together and so many sacrifices, Sukuna is finally breaking. He is finally vulnerable. But we all know Gege, and Gege isn't going to let his boy Sukuna go down that easily. Sukuna always turns the tables, and on the last page we see him landing a massive black flash punch on LaRue. The narrator reminds us that after his second black flash attack, Gojo had regained his reverse curse technique output. So presumably, Sukuna, who has now landed a second black flash in a short period of time, could also be about to recover his RCT. However, even though this is the implication, it is not yet confirmed whether Sukuna gets his RCT back, because the chapter ends on a cliffhanger and we'll have to wait until the next chapter in order to find out for sure. What a wild, action-packed chapter. So much stuff happened, and I'm really wondering now, is Sukuna finally breaking? Are the sorcerers finally making real progress? Or is Gege teasing us yet again? Is everyone working together finally going to be enough? Are even more sorcerers going to join the fight? Maybe some new faces, and maybe some faces that already fought but then recovered. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and let me know what you think about the whole Gojo controversy. I'll update you on what the official translation says about that whole exchange in my next JJK video, so definitely like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. If you're looking for an epic video to watch next, don't ignore my video on every Gorosei's newly revealed Devil Fruit power, link on screen and in the description.